If seminal mid-90s blockbuster Space Jam taught us anything, it's that teamwork is both important and fun. Yes, Michael Jordan may have been the only actual basketballer on the Toon Squad, but where would he have been without Bugs Bunny's cunning or Daffy's tenacity? Or Bill Murray showing up just to stand around and be Bill Murray? My point is that no matter how talented you may be, teamwork is crucial in all walks of life, and WWE is no different. It may be the land of real-life superheroes and villains, but once a year they're forced to work together. I'm talking, of course, about Survivor Series. It may not be as big as WrestleMania or as rabidly popular as the Royal Rumble. Seriously, can you imagine the riots if they scrapped the Royal Rumble? But Survivor Series still holds a place in our hearts. And those traditional tag matches only tell half the story. The history of Survivor Series is full of iconic moments, debuts, screw jobs, and a straight-up vehicular assault. So without any further ado, I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic.com, and this is our list of every single Survivor Series ranked from worst to best. Also, in hindsight, I'd like to apologize to Lola Bunny, who actually did have a level of basketball ability. Join us! Number 31, Survivor Series 1993. This show featured a slew of rescheduled matches forced by the absence of Jerry Lawler and Doink the Clown. The Hart family plodded to a 30-minute victory over Shawn Michaels, standing in for Lawler, and 4 anonymous men in night helmets. Doink's absence didn't deter WWF from dressing up the Bushwhackers and Men on a Mission as clowns. They steamrolled Bam Bam Bigelow's team with an offense based almost entirely around circus antics, which is clearly the hidden secret to a clean sweep at Survivor Series. Interesting that no other teams have tried that since. It was all topped off by Lex Luger leading the All-Americans into battle against the Foreign Fanatics. Those aren't joke names I've made up for the purpose of this video, the teams really were called that. The Red, White and Blue squad consisted of Luger, the Steiner brothers and The Undertaker. Who says evil zombie morticians can't also love apple pie, denim jeans and freedom? Number 30, Survivor Series 1994. This is the one with all the little people, but I'm amazed that remains the standout memory of Survivor Series 94. It was also the site of that Brett vs. Backlund submission match, one of the most opinion-dividing title bouts in WWE history. The main event saw Undertaker face Yokozuna in a casket match with Chuck Bloody Norris as the special outside enforcer. He didn't even do anything cool, although I guess this was before the internet age when he gained all of his meme powers. The WWF Championship match was long as hell and can be a bit of a chore to watch in hindsight. It wasn't terrible, but it's sad watching Brett lose the title because his mother threw in the towel. In fairness, mine would have done the same. Number 29, Survivor Series 1990. This show is the site of one of the most significant debuts in WWE history. That's right, the gobbledygooker finally hatched from his oversized egg. It was also the first appearance of a big goth named The Undertaker. It's okay, I barely remember him either. Fittingly, the match featuring the Phenom's debut was also the best on the show. The WWF hadn't seen anything quite like him before, and even though he was eliminated after chasing Dusty Rhodes to the back, everybody immediately bought into this new, terrifying heel on the block. Sadly, the booking really let this Survivor Series down. The whole show was built around a mega main event featuring all of the night survivors, which saw perennial underdogs Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior finally go over. It's about time those guys caught a break. Number 28, Survivor Series 2010. Here we saw perhaps the biggest blown call in Survivor Series main event history. I can't emphasize enough how my best friend Wade Barrett should have won the WWE Championship here. Instead, he lost to Randy Orton, which, as per the stipulation, led to John Cena being fired. We never saw him again. Well, for at least 20 hours or so. This match, along with Team Cena's victory over the Nexus a few months earlier, totally robbed the young stable of their momentum, and it was all downhill thereafter. We also need to give a huge shout out to my boy Caval, aka indie veteran Loki, who celebrated his one and only WWE pay-per-view appearance by losing to Dolph Ziggler. Number 27, Survivor Series 2013. Witness the birth of the Big Dog. Survivor Series 13 marked the first of many dominant Roman Reigns moments in WWE, as he was the sole survivor of a compelling opening tag match. The Big Dog eliminated 4 of his team's 5 opponents, all with spears. We were warned, guys, the warnings were absolutely there. The rest of the show felt like a big step back, to be honest. Cena won, then Orton won, then Cena and Orton had a big old standoff with their respective titles, and everyone on the internet said, "This feud again?" Also, let's quickly mention the Divas division. In hindsight, by 2013, we were absolutely desperate for the Women's Revolution to roll around, as WWE treated us to a 7-on-7 elimination match. It featured the likes of JoJo, Eva Marie, Rosa Mendez, and Oksana. The Bellas survived, in case you were wondering. Number 26, Survivor Series 1991. Honestly, this was a pretty rotten show from a pure in-ring standpoint, but one with plenty for the fans to get excited about in terms of booking. Undertaker beat Hulk Hogan for the WWF Championship, an utterly seismic result as well as a logical one, with Hulkamania well and truly on the way out. It was the first ever singles match at Survivor Series and saw Taker tombstone Hogan vaguely near a steel chair to win his first ever WWF Championship. Ric Flair interfered in that match and was also the sole survivor in the show's opener by being the only man to escape disqualification. The crafty old nature boy, eh? What's he like? The real downside to this event, however, is that much of the action appeared to be phoned in, almost as though the roster were saving themselves for another pay-per-view just 6 days later. They were, this Tuesday in Texas, where Hogan got his win back. Number 25, Survivor Series 2000. The first Survivor Series of the new millennium was a strangely inconsistent show, especially as it took place in one of the hottest years in company history. Let's not beat around the bush here, this event was absolute anarchy for better or for worse. Remember Austin trying to literally murder Triple H with a forklift? Of course you do. It wasn't even the worst crime of the night. That award goes to The Undertaker's shocking burial of Kurt Angle. Even in victory, the talented young champion was made to look incredibly weak. Taker deliberately pulled him up at the count of 2 twice. These near falls didn't follow a chokeslam or a last ride. The first came after a leg drop and the second after a sidewalk slam. Nice one, Undertaker. There was so much craziness on this show, the traditional tag matches were actually a nice change of tone. Jeff Hardy was the big star here, emerging as the sole survivor in a fast and furious bout towards the end of the night. Number 24, Survivor Series 1999. Here we go, you knew it was coming. This is the show where Stone Cold was ran down by a mystery assailant. The driver was later revealed to be Rikishi, who said he did it for The Rock, even though he actually did it for Triple H. It was a messy storyline in all honesty, and the incident totally overshadowed the rest of the show. Still, the main event was fun in a chaotic Attitude Era way. Triple H, The Rock, and Big Show did battle in a triple threat, with Show stepping in for Austin. There were run-ins by DX and Vince McMahon, and while it sounds like a total nightmare on paper, it sort of worked. Remember, this was 1999 and there were basically no laws back then. This show also gets bonus points for featuring one of the most lovable Survivor Series teams of all time. Gangrel, Steve Blackman, Val Venus, and Mark Henry. No, their match wasn't very good, but we're going to ignore that. Number 23, Survivor Series 2011. The poster for this event screamed, "The most charismatic tag team of all time." But who could it have been referring to? The Rockers? Edge and Christian? The Rock and Sock Connection? No, more like the Rock and John Connection. Am I right? We all sat and tried to think of a better pun for hours, literally hours. It was the best we could come up with, and I'm sorry. We're all very tired and we want to go home. That's right, Survivor Series 2011 was main evented by future opponents John Cena and The Rock, who were forced to team together with hilarious consequences. If your definition of hilarious involves a straightforward 20-minute victory over The Miz and R-Truth. CM Punk's mammoth title reign also began on this show, and he was clearly delighted by it, leaping into the Madison Square Garden crowd to celebrate. Or he was desperately trying to grab just a little bit of the limelight back from attention juggernauts Rock and Cena. One or the other. Number 22, Survivor Series 2012. Sierra, Uniform, Romeo, Victor, India, Victor, Oscar. No, sorry, that's far too tedious. I was trying to spell out Survivor Series in the phonetic alphabet because this is where The Shield made their main roster debut. But it wasn't as cool as I thought it was going to be. Sorry. Let me just take off this bulletproof vest. Ambrose, Reigns, and Rollins interfered in the main event title match, helping CM Punk overcome Ryback and John Cena to retain the belt he won a year earlier. Apart from that, this show was the opposite of Survivor Series 1991. Good action, but not a whole lot of storytelling. Dolph Ziggler was the sole survivor of a big 20-minute tag match, despite being a last-minute replacement. Still, his performance was very good. He gets a lot of criticism, but if there's one thing Dolph Ziggler is good at, it's Survivor Series matches, and making his body go all wobbly. Number 21, Survivor Series 1998. Total non-stop Russo. This event had all the run-ins, all the swerves, and all the turns. The booking team decided to throw about 2 years worth of surprises into one show, and we're going to recap it for you right now. God help us. So this event was a one-night tournament for the vacant WWF Championship. There were 14 matches on the card, but the main thing to keep in mind is that mean old Vince McMahon did not want Austin or Rock to win that tournament. The semi-finals boiled down to Austin versus Mankind and Rock versus Taker. Shane McMahon turned heel to align with his father and screw Stone Cold out of the competition, despite having just become a babyface about a week earlier. Kane screwed Undertaker out of the other semi-final, deliberately attacking The Rock to get his brother disqualified. Then, in the final, Rock got Mankind in the sharpshooter, and Vince called for the bell. Yes, we had the first big rehash of the Montreal Screwjob, turning Rock heel and Mankind face in the process, and probably causing Bret Hart to smash up a TV somewhere in Atlanta. So why is this utter mess not nearer the bottom of our list? Well, go back and watch it. It's actually quite fun in a guilty way. Also, Bossman appears to try to hinder Rock several times throughout the night, but if you watch closely, he's actually helping him on behalf of the corporation. It's like something out of Lost. Number 20, Survivor Series 2015. Another tournament for the vacant WWE Championship, but don't worry, this one wasn't nearly as silly. In fact, it was very sensible. Maybe too sensible. In the build-up to the event, the semi-finalists were revealed to be Ambrose, Owens, Reigns, and Del Rio. Everybody smugly predicted that Roman would beat his Shield brother in the final, only for things to exactly pan out that way. There was one final twist in the tale, as legitimate mid-carder Sheamus crashed Roman's confetti celebration and cashed in his Money in the Bank contract. Everybody immediately laughed at the big dog's misfortune, only to slowly realize that Sheamus hadn't been a main eventer for about half a decade. And maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the best course of action. Still, the show's action was largely good from top to bottom, and we also saw The Undertaker celebrate 25 years in WWE by beating up some spooky hillbillies with his brother. Good, clean family fun. Number 19, Survivor Series 2017. Last year's Survivor Series was a little bit weird. It was built upon Shane McMahon rolling into Raw with his SmackDown posse and beating everybody down gangland style. It's amazing what you can get away with when you're the boss's son, including mass assault and criminal damage. Still, it certainly built hype for a series of inter-brand matches, some of which worked and some of which didn't. The best was AJ Styles versus Brock Lesnar, which saw the phenomenal one push Brock to his best match in a long time. The Shield and New Day also put on a show, while Asuka was the sole survivor of an intense tag match. Then came the main event, in which Triple H turned the entire concept of Survivor Series into his personal playground. Shane McMahon faced horrible odds against the game, Kurt Angle and Braun Strowman, only for Triple H to ambush Kurt and take him out of the match. But why? We're still not 100% clear on an explanation, other than he was messing with his brother-in-law. Anyway, Raw won, but Braun was very, very cross indeed. Number 18, Survivor Series 2006. This pay-per-view was like junk food. Very enjoyable at the time, but not really containing anything of substance. It's the one where Shawn Michaels eliminated Mike Knox before asking who he just pinned. It's also worth mentioning that despite his team consisting of DX and the Hardy Boys, the crowd were behind newcomer CM Punk in a huge way. Elsewhere, Batista bounced Booker T around the ring to win the World Heavyweight title, and in a tag match involving John Cena and Bobby Lashley, the survivors were John Cena and Bobby Lashley. Anything can happen in the WWE. Number 17, Survivor Series 2004. The tagline for this show could probably have been Randy Orton's Big Babyface Party, although having said it out loud, I can see why they didn't go for that. We all know that Orton isn't the most natural babyface around, but his performance in the big main event tag match was genuinely superb. He might not play a convincing good guy, but Randy is the Shawn Michaels of Survivor Series, which is probably about a third as impressive as being Mr. WrestleMania, but it's still something. In becoming the sole survivor for a second year running, Orton won his team the right to take control of Monday Night Raw for one night each. That team consisted of Jericho, Benoit, Maven, and Randy himself. And no, I can't remember what Maven did on his night as GM, but I definitely want to head to the network and find out. Earlier in the night, JBL beat Booker T, and it was sad. Also, at one point, John Cena chased Carlito out of the building because Carlito's bodyguard had stabbed him in a nightclub. Classic heel tactics. tactics, right? Number 16, Survivor Series 2014. This was a one-match show, but what a match it was. One of the best Survivor Series main events of all time. We saw Dolph Ziggler at his peak, the unbelievable debut of Sting, and the demise of the Authority all in one bout. Yes, okay, the Authority were gone for about a month, but we don't think this show should suffer as a result. You also have to hand it to babyface team captain John Cena, whose strategy in picking tag partners was immaculate. He just opted for very large men, and presumably picked Ziggler to act as a meat shield. Ironically, it was Dolph who survived, with a big assist from the Stinger. Sadly, the rest of the show was pretty frustrating. Nikki Bella beat AJ Lee in seconds, a clear callback to Daniel Bryan's infamous loss to Sheamus. Elsewhere, Adam Rose and his bunny mascot defeated Slatergator, the team of Titus O'Neil and Heath Slater. It wasn't as fun as it sounds. Number 15, Survivor Series 1992. This show should have been a massive disaster, given the sudden absence of Hogan and Warrior. By sudden, we mean very sudden, especially in the case of Warrior, who's actually on the event poster. Look at his big face, there it is! Somehow, Vince managed to scramble together a respectable show. Warrior was replaced in his marquee tag match by Mr. Perfect, who teamed with Randy Savage to face Ric Flair and Razor Ramon. What a lineup! However, the main consequence of the reshuffle saw Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels' match bumped into the main event, setting the scene for one of the most iconic feuds in wrestling history. Not everything was good though. Big Boss Man and Nails had a nightstick on a pole match, one of those stipulations that you just know isn't going to be fun. Did the nightstick feature in the finish? No, it absolutely did not, ladies and gentlemen. Number 14, Survivor Series 2003. The best way to describe Survivor Series 2003 is that it was a show full of stuff. Lots of stuff happened here, both good and bad. Vince McMahon beat The Undertaker in a Buried Alive match, which is probably bad, but it signaled the end of Biker Taker, which is probably good. Team Bischoff defeated Team Austin, costing Stone Cold his position as co-general manager of Raw. That was bad, but the match itself was very good. Kane survived an onslaught of tiny little Shane McMahon punches to throw him in an ambulance, which we're going to put down as a good thing, and Goldberg retained his World Heavyweight Championship against Triple H. That wasn't so good, maybe because the match lasted 11 minutes, which in Goldberg years is actually 6 hours. The star of the show was Shawn Michaels, who fought bravely to save Austin's career, only to fall at the last hurdle of an epic elimination tag match. Number 13, Survivor Series 1997. Come on now, this event should need no introduction. The Montreal Screwjob is one of the most infamous incidents in the history of pro wrestling, as Vince McMahon, Shawn Michaels, and Earl Hebner conspired to legitimately screw Bret Hart out of the WWF Championship. The bout was good while it lasted, but the finish overshadowed absolutely everything that came before and after for the rest of time. Also, a load of other matches happened, but does anyone even care about that? I suppose I'll talk about them. The best tag match on the show was probably Team USA versus Team Canada, even if it was won by the British Bulldog. We'll let you figure out the mistake there. Here's a clue, he's from Wigan. That match also featured the debut of Steve Blackman, so we had to sedate Jack when the time came to watch it. Kane also had his first pay-per-view bout on the show, beating Mankind under custom lighting, like the original Sin Cara, only red and popular. Number 12, Survivor Series 2008. This was the night of the great Jeff Hardy bait and switch, which sounds like one hell of a 1920s crime novel. The charismatic Enigma was said to be unconscious in his hotel room, which led to the shock return of Edge. This definitely has to be considered a big surprise because we last saw Edge at SummerSlam being murdered with fire by The Undertaker. The Rated R superstar snatched the WWE Championship from right under the nose of Triple H, and Vladimir Kozlov was also in the match, but honestly, who thought he was going to win? On the negative side, it was immensely frustrating to see John Cena dispatch Chris Jericho to win the World Heavyweight Championship. Y2J was coming off the back of his amazing feud with Shawn Michaels, while Cena was only just returning from injury. So of course, Big Match John hit the FU for a comprehensive victory. Again, this event gets bonus points for a very fun team of babyfaces: Shawn Michaels, Rey Mysterio, Great Khali, and Crime Time. Somebody give those guys a Netflix series right this second. Number 11, Survivor Series 1989. Survivor Series really got off to a hot start in its early days, so this was the first to really divide opinion, and it still managed to be pretty damn good. The show is especially memorable for the Ultimate Warrior stepping into the spotlight, as he truly broke free from the mid-card with a huge main event performance. He eliminated Andre the Giant in thrilling fashion, knocking him to the outside for a tremendous visual image, en route to becoming sole survivor against that dark dastardly Heenan family. He even faced Heenan himself at the end, a classic example of the cowardly heel manager finally getting his comeuppance. It was really exciting, and Warrior didn't even rip Heenan's clothes off or cover him in barbecue sauce. John. Most of the undercard was good too, with Hogan the sole survivor in his match because Warrior isn't allowed nice things if Hogan can't have them too. Mr. Perfect was also a sole survivor on the night, winning on behalf of the Rude Brood against Roddy's Rowdies. Can we bring back team names, please? I think I want that more than anything in the world. Number 10, Survivor Series 2005. If this list has taught us anything so far, it's that Randy Orton and Shawn Michaels are two of the best when it comes to epic Survivor Series performances. Well, guess what happened on this show? That's right, both men, one representing SmackDown, the other representing Raw, squaring off as the final two of a wonderful elimination bout. Sometimes the pieces just fall into place. That main event is well worth a watch, and stay tuned after the bell for a vengeful return. Spoiler alert, the vengeful return is The Undertaker. Vengeful returns generally turn out to be The Undertaker. Earlier in the night, Triple H and Ric Flair took each other to the limit in a bloody last man standing match. It just managed to be the right mix of uncomfortable and enthralling, but it's not one for the squeamish. In less disturbing action, Melina and Trish Stratus did the women's division proud, despite being given only 5 minutes or so. Teddy Long and Eric Bischoff also had a match. I'd rather not talk about it. Number 9, Survivor Series 1987. Here we are, the first ever Survivor Series. This was groundbreaking at the time, a procession of long, multi-layered tag matches featuring the larger-than-life stars of the Golden Era. Coming off the back of the mammoth WrestleMania 3, it felt huge. Not bad for a pay-per-view created entirely to overshadow Starrcade. From top to bottom, the booking of the show was very intelligent. We had a feel-good babyface victory to start things off, as the incredible trio of Savage, Roberts, and Steamboat survived. Then the audience was wowed by the Jumping Bomb Angels, a pair of incredible Japanese imports who wouldn't look out of place in 2007, let alone 1987. A gargantuan 20-man bout followed, which somehow managed to be very entertaining despite clocking in at 37 minutes. Finally, the main event saw Hulk Hogan shockingly counted out halfway through, a booking masterstroke in our opinion. Andre saw off the brave efforts of Bam Bam Bigelow to become Survivor Series' first ever sole survivor, and his planet-sized feud with the Hulkster rumbled on. Number 8, Survivor Series 2001. This is a weird pay-per-view to talk about. On one hand, it represents the climax of the invasion angle, the biggest blown opportunity in wrestling history. On the other hand, it's actually a really fun show. The WWF vs Alliance main event is basically impossible to hate, although the teams were a little bit odd. When you think of WCW, you think of Sting, Flair, The Outsiders, DDP, not Steve Austin, Kurt Angle, and Vince McMahon's literal son. Still, it's an exciting contest with various flashpoints, including Jericho taking his ball and going home, Double Agent Angle, and Rock being the big, beautiful hero we all love him to be. The main issue with Survivor Series 2001 is the fact that the main event was so dramatic, every other match was forced to play second fiddle. In fairness, the Hardys and Dudleys tried to steal the show inside a steel cage, and almost did so. Number 7, Survivor Series 2007. This was a card built around two huge matches: The Undertaker vs Batista in Hell in a Cell, and Randy Orton vs Shawn Michaels for the WWE Championship, and presumably title of Survivor Series Prom King. We only saw one traditional elimination tag match this time around, but it was a good one, as Triple H and Jeff Hardy battled to survive 5-on-2 odds. It was like watching a dad and his son bond for the first time in years, even though they still have very different opinions on Marilyn Manson. We also saw Hornswoggle versus the Great Khali, a match you just know Vince McMahon was itching to book from the moment both men were on the same roster. Great Khali won, by the way. He won in 3 minutes, and you didn't need me to answer that question for you. Have some self-respect. Number 6, Survivor Series 2009. 2009 saw a very solid Survivor Series peppered with big moments, mainly the epic main event between Cena, Triple H, and Michaels. With just about everyone expecting DX to work together, HBK blew the roof off by immediately superkicking the game out of the ring. What followed was one of the best triple threats in WWE history. Earlier in the night, Kofi Kingston made his case for a main event push, showing great babyface fire as he became sole survivor and stunned Randy Orton. Not so stupid now, is he, Randy? This actually came before the whole stupid incident, but the correct answer is that everybody makes mistakes. We've got your back, Kofi. This show also featured a very entertaining squash match, as Batista Batista destroyed his former friend in about 5 minutes, much like when Ronda Rousey squashed Alexa Bliss a few months ago, helping Cultaholic defeat WrestleTalk in the process. We love you, Ronda. Number 5, Survivor Series 1988. The original Survivor Series was an ambitious and successful event, but the sequel was even better. It took the previous year's formula and improved it, delivering a tighter show all around. The main story of the night was the triumph of Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, the Mega Powers. The pair were the only survivors of the main event, but a happy ending wasn't entirely on the cards. Hogan had a big sweaty celebration with Miss Elizabeth, and Savage was a little bit annoyed. This would, of course, lay the foundations of WrestleMania 5, because if Hulk Hogan wants to celebrate by acting like your girlfriend is his girlfriend, he should damn well be allowed to. This show also saw a marathon 42-minute bout, apparently featuring every tag team under the sun. 2 of those teams were the British Bulldogs and the Rougeaus, who liked to pass time on the road by punching each other's teeth out. They were kept apart for the majority of the match, a wise decision in hindsight. Number 4, Survivor Series 1995. This is an absolute diamond in the rough. 1995 was not a great time for the WWF, but they managed to produce one of their best Survivor Series during this period. The show is one of the greatest pay-per-views of the New Generation era, and looking back over the promotion's historic peaks and falls, it came out of absolutely nowhere. Bret Hart and Diesel put on an innovative and shocking main event, a no DQ match which finally ended Big Daddy Cool's unpopular WWF Championship reign. The finishing stretch saw Diesel send the Hitman flying from the ring apron through the Spanish announce table, a totally unique bump at the time. They played it off as a legitimate mistake, only for Hart to sneak a roll-up as Diesel tried to end the match quickly. This show was also responsible for the best women's Survivor Series match since the Jumping Bomb Angels, thanks largely to the efforts of Alundra Blaze and the terrifying violence machine Aja Kong. Number 3, Survivor Series 2016. This was the show where Survivor Series returned to its roots. The recent brand split gave us 3 elimination tag matches, pitting the men, women, and tag teams of Raw and SmackDown against one another. All 3 matches delivered, making this show a modern-day triumph of traditional Survivor Series action. And then, once the dust settled, we had the small matter of Lesnar versus Goldberg. The best match of the night was the men's 5-on-5 contest. It lasted almost an hour, but absolutely flew by, and was wisely split into several chunks of clear-cut storytelling. We had SmackDown on SmackDown violence between Ambrose and Styles, James Ellsworth eliminating Braun Strowman, a mini Shield reunion, and the eventual triumph of Bray Wyatt, and who else? Our boy, Randall Keith. How would the main event top that? By shocking the goddamn world. Goldberg didn't allow Brock to even the score from 12 years prior. Instead, he decided to blast him with a pair of spears and a jackhammer, winning the match in under 90 seconds. Who's next? Number 2, Survivor Series 1996. The summer of 1996 was a very important time in wrestling. Hogan turned heel over in WCW, while in the WWF, Steve Austin won King of the Ring and started talking about whipping people's bottoms. Over the course of just a few months, the industry developed an edge that clearly benefited Survivor Series. Austin's push led to a showdown with Bret Hart. For our money, one of the best matches in Survivor Series history. It might not be quite as good as their WrestleMania Classic a few months later, but that's okay because realistically, what is? The main event was also #popping as Sid shockingly defeated Shawn Michaels to take his WWF Championship. I think we were supposed to feel sad for Shawn, but the historically edgy New York crowd didn't seem too sympathetic. And if all that work rate is starting to make you crave a chair shot, Mankind and Undertaker had one of their big lovely brawls on this show too. History tells us that the biggest part of Survivor Series 96 was The Rock's debut, but it was actually one of the weaker matches on the card. You can't deny its importance, sure, but this event deserves to be remembered for so much more. Number 1, Survivor Series 2002. Why is Survivor Series 2002 the best Survivor Series of all time? It's a hard question to answer, because we really don't know where to begin. There's so much to look at. The debut of the Elimination Chamber, a tag match featuring all of the SmackDown 6, a hardcore match for the Women's Championship, a chaotic opener, and a Clash of the Titans courtesy of The Big Show and Brock Lesnar. Is that enough for you? That's before we even mention the return of the big bad booty daddy himself, your favorite and mine, Scott Steiner, making his return to the company for the first time since 1994. At its core, Survivor Series 2002 is one of the purest feel-good stories in WWE history. No, not just because of Big Papa Pump's return, although that certainly brings a tear to the eye. I'm talking about Shawn Michaels winning the World World Heavyweight Championship, surviving the hellish Elimination Chamber, and last beating friend-turned-foe Triple H. That match also featured Jericho, Booker T, Kane, and RVD, a truly stacked lineup. It must go down as one of the best chamber matches ever, but strangely might not even be the match of the night. That honor could go to the Elimination 3-way tag bout between Eddie, Chavo, Angle, Benoit, Ray, and Edge. It was utterly brilliant, as any sane wrestling fan would expect it to be. So thanks to its unbelievable lineup and collection of amazing matches, Survivor Series 2002 sits atop the list as our greatest of all time. So that's our list. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and you can follow me on Twitter here. If you enjoy what we do here at Cultaholic, you can pledge to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cultaholic. And most importantly, don't forget to hit subscribe and join us.